you stand out in the hunting world in a way that you'll talk about those things. I think you're a lot more, I would say, intellectual hunter. I would even say spiritual hunter. I would be interested in two things. How have those views evolved? Have you always had them? Have they changed over time? And then also, how have you been received in the quote unquote traditional hunting world?
When I was younger, I thought I had to behave a certain way that I was kind of seeing on TV, or I was seeing like with buddies of mine, to where like if we killed a deer, we would hoot and holler, and I would be excited. If I shot a buck and I was hooting and hollering, it wasn't fake. I was really excited. And like buddies of mine, when we first started hunting, we would come up empty handed 99% of the time. So when we finally got a deer, like we'd hug and, like, holy cow. And even though we just lived it, we'd tell each other the story again. And like, he came down this ridge and, and we do all this stuff. But once you were over that emotional dump, you'd look at this animal, and I would, and you'd see the blood coming out of his wounds, and you'd understand that, oh, my arrow passed through his heart, or my bullet passed through his lungs, and he ran. And I'd put myself in this perspective of, I'd watch him tip over, and I knew that he's losing his life right now. And so I would think about that. And what if that was me? What if I was the one that had been shot? I'm over there trying to take my next breath, but my lungs are filling, and I would just have this connection of understanding, or at least I would think about, what did this deer go through? And now that he's laying there and I'm going to start skinning him, I'm looking at his eyes and his nose, and, and right away I'd start cleaning the blood up, and I start brushing the dirt off his face and putting his tongue back in his mouth if his tongue had fallen out, and things that I felt were appropriate. And so I've just always had this, ultimate respect of, don't take the animal's life until you're entirely ready, or this is the animal, or this is the moment, this is what you're going to do. And then once you do that, there's proper steps that you need to take to utilize this animal and to be kind of in this wild system. And so while I've always felt that great connection, it took me a while to understand. And to be honest with you, you were also a big piece of my growth, because talking to you about this stuff for the Men's Health magazine was something that I'd never done before. And in talking and teaching it to you, or in talking about it openly with you, I found areas of my brain and things that I talked about, kind of where you'd ask me a question, I'd say a sentence, and I'd go, yeah, that's how I feel. But I haven't had to conjure that sentence up to anyone else, because nobody else had asked me that question. And so then I started to understand. Then once I read The Comfort Crisis, and I started to see all these metrics that you went and put to the things that I was experiencing, and then also even actually with the scarcity brain, and kind of seeing, like, I kind of giggled when I read the scarcity brain, because it's very easy to look at somebody and be like, dude, you're getting hoodwinked with a slot machine. But then I also looked at it as my own life, and I was like, man, I'm getting hoodwinked with a whitetail deer, because every November, it's all I can think about. And every springtime, I want to go out and tap trees right now for maple syrup, and I have firewood to cut, and then I'm going to have fish that I'm going to go chase. And so it's kind of the same thing a little bit. I mean, there's no bells and whistles, but I get maple syrup comes out of the tree. Once I boil it down, it's kind of the same thing. You get it in. And so I didn't always have this soulful, heartful connection to where I could articulate it, but I always took that time, even around my buddies. I didn't talk to them about it, but I always took that time to put myself in the deer's shoes, if you will, or to put myself in the duck's shoes, and to do these things. And I'd killed a couple animals when I was younger. Like, I shot a blue jay once. I shot a black-capped chickadee once. These are non-game species that I just cause and effect. I had a gun. I was a little kid, or younger kid. I saw a bird and I shot it, fell. And those were immediate for me, immediate no-nos. And sorrows. And like, I remember I shot the chickadee and instantly I was like, oh my, I just took this animal's life for absolutely no reason. And then I kind of let someone talk me into shooting the blue jay. And then I learned then that I was like, doesn't matter what anyone else wants. It matters what I want. And then even when we first started, and working with you, and then when we wrote our first film in 2012, I wrote this voiceover for the film and I handed it to Kyle Nikolai and he read it and he's like, this is terrible. He's like, you have to rewrite all of this. He's like, I've never, ever heard you talk like this, but I wrote it in a manner that I thought we were going to entertain people.
Mm.
And he educated me much like you did in some essence, where he's like, you have to make these films as though no one's going to watch them. You have to make these films so they're so true to who you are that it doesn't matter if anyone else watches it, because if you make it for you, then, and you're being completely honest, then you'll never have to chase any sort of fashion or a different type of decision or inspirations or whatever.
Yeah, dude, isn't that such a good metaphor for art and how to live?
Yeah. Yes.
It's like, why copy everyone else? Just do your own
make
thing.
It for you.
If people like it, great. If they don't, you still got something internally rewarding from it.
Yeah, and if you chased the things that people liked, which change all the time, you're always going to be 1% behind or 10% behind where the people are going. You're always and you're not doing anything that's true to yourself. So it's literally it's an empty bucket.
Well, then you have to become you're copying what has become the trend. Whereas I would argue with your case, you have started a trend of hunting documentaries that are different than what was before. Like you're kind of the pioneer. You're seeing a lot more documentaries that are shot like Planet Earth, if you will, that are asking big questions. When you first released your first documentaries, what was the reaction in the hunting community?
I thought we were going to get murdered, if I'm being honest. I thought the guys
hunters do have guns.
Yep, and I thought the guys are it's gonna be horrible, and it wasn't. People came out of the woodwork and said, I've thought about this for years. I've never articulated it to my buddies. I've had these same sorrows. I've had the same seriousness. Other guys came. I mean, I'll be honest with you. A couple of guys came to me and said, this is, ridiculous. It's just hunting. It's just a deer, but very, very little of that, Michael. Much more was people then wanted their kids to watch our stuff. And then, hunting instructors wanted their pupils to watch our stuff, and to, guys that were going to get their hunter safety cards. And there was a lot of stuff like that. I met a young lady last week at a convention. I met her dad, and she started a company called Cookies for Conservation. And so where she started baking cookies in their kitchen, she would go out and sell it. This was something that she wanted to do. She was 13 or 14, and she started selling all these cookies. She gives 100% of the proceeds. I'm sure she buys cookie dough and stuff with her, but she gives 100% of her proceeds to wildlife habitat and generating wildlife habitat. And he's like, you are the one that inspired her to do this stuff.
Awesome.
And so, yeah. And I got another guy. He's like, hey, can I take a picture with you? He's like, my kids are going to flip out. He's like, you are, and this is so weird, but he's like, you're our kids' reward for if like they crush their metrics during the week of school and sports or whatever, they get to watch Donnie Vincent films on the weekend. And
awesome.
So so it's stuff like that and I've received very little negative feedback. Some of it, some guys don't want to listen to the long drawn out answers or writing or kind of the reflective nature of it. They don't want to do that. And then of course some people are just, they're just against what I'm doing altogether. But